We had the unemployment rate, the official Stats SA unemployment rate coming out last week, 25%, so that deteriorated during the first quarter from December. You do point out in today's release, though, that we are sitting with 830,000 unfilled positions in South Africa. So that employment rate or unemployment rate doesn't have to be so high, or wouldn't be so high, if we could actually put people into these jobs.
Quite right. This is a trend of the last 15 years, and especially since 2002 when the Immigrations Act was introduced. Recently the Immigrations Act has been revised and it's made it substantially harder for foreign high-skilled workers to find work in South Africa. The most recent amendments to legislation effectively ban quota work permits and also immigration agents, both of which are very widely used by companies in tapping into skills. So these are very recent developments, and the outlook is not positive. Companies won't be able to import the skills that they need, and so they will look to the local population to provide those skills. And they will drive up the wages of local skilled people in the process, because of that artificial shortage of high-skilled workers. So over the last 15 years, in fact, a high-skilled worker's wage on average has increased by 286%, showing just how desperately short of high skills the South African economy is.
Now, when we talk about high skills, are we looking at specific sectors here where we do have this big shortfall of skilled workers?
Well, the occupations we're looking at are typically professionals, technicians, skilled agricultural workers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, accountants, really the highest paid and the most skilled workers in the economy. They don't dominate particular sectors, but they are prevalent in medicine, in the law, and accountants, of course, are scattered throughout the economy. So yes, it's particularly large enterprises with needs for large skills. Pharmaceutical companies, banks, mining houses and the others. Very large enterprises that have this need for highly specialized skills. And they really are struggling to find the of skilled person that they need.
Now, presumably the government's making it difficult to hire foreigners to fill these positions because it would like locals to have those positions. What's it doing, though, to upskill local workers so they can take those places?
Well, government is very much complicit in this problem. The number of medical school places at UCT, for example, is roughly the same today as it was in 1975. So there's no planned expansion of capacity for skills creation at the high level. Government has been fiddling around with the CETA system, which is supposed to replace the old apprenticeship system, and it's been a staggering disaster. In fact, the National Skills Fund, which is funded by a 1% payroll tax every year, amounting to tens of billions of rands, produces only 20 to 30,000 so-called learners a year. So we're paying about 200,000 rand to create what is effectively an unskilled person with no job experience. So yes, I mean, the whole education system in South Africa leaves much to be desired, and I think government has created this problem. I think the reason why government is so anti-foreigner in the workplace is that it's very much consistent with employment equity and affirmative action. People are promoted into jobs because there are no foreigners available for those positions, especially young black Africans who don't otherwise have opportunities in the high-skilled occupations.
How about the brain drain? To what extent is that also exacerbating this unfilled 830,000 positions that we have in the country?
The strange thing about the brain drain is that it has been reversing over the last 5 years. South Africa, bizarrely, perhaps in relation to what you might have expected, South Africa sailed through the global financial crisis relatively unscathed. At least the economy recovered very quickly and had only a very short recession. Of course, employment has been a different story. But as employment opportunities for South Africans abroad have collapsed with the global financial crisis, many South Africans are actually returning to the country to seek work here. So I think that's a good thing. As wages rise here, more and more South Africans will revisit the opportunities in South Africa. And certainly living standards in South Africa remain, for high-skilled professionals, some of the highest in the world.
Private sector, surely it has some role also in skills transfer and training of people for these positions. What's the private sector doing?
Well, the private sector does some training, but training of the kind you find in the private sector comes overwhelmingly from work experience. So the private sector doesn't utilize formal training academies and institutions to the degree you might expect, because the work experience replaces the role of training institutions. So I suppose the best way to get people skilled is to get them jobs, in the sense that by working they acquire in a gradual, incremental fashion the skills needed for further expansion of their careers. But you know, jobs, the prospects for jobs in South Africa is very bleak. Permanent jobs in particular have taken a hammering over the last few years, and they show no indication at all of returning.
Well, let's take a look at the improvement we saw in the Adcorp index in April, 1.86%, so it looks pretty muted. Was that across the board? Are we seeing all sectors starting to hire again?
It was, particularly in those sectors with high-skilled occupations. So, you know, finance, mining, even manufacturing didn't put in a bad showing, but it's still very patchy and uneven. The increase during March was very hopeful in the index, where all sectors reported again a positive growth in employment, but this last month was very patchy. So I think probably for another 9 to 12 months we're going to see a difficult employment environment, but certainly no more job shedding on an economy-wide scale.